This season of the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast is proudly supported by My Music Staff.
So I think the most important thing is to really just, try to really nail down who you're going to be and how you want to be perceived and who your customers that you really want to help. We can't be everything to everybody.
Welcome to the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast, the place where teachers from around the world meet to share innovative ideas about music education. Listen and learn as we help you motivate your students, grow your income, expand your studio, and become a more creative piano teacher.
G'day everyone, welcome back to Season 2 of the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast for 2018. Very excited to have you here, and you're listening to episode number 128. A very special welcome to my InnerCircle community members as well. My name is Tim Topham, your host for the show, and whether you've been joining us for a long time or this is your first time, thank you very much for choosing to spend time with me. The Creative Piano Teaching Podcast is your place for inspiration, ideas, business, and teaching strategies to help support your teaching and grow your studio. Today's show notes and a full transcript are now available at timtopham.com/episode 128. I first found out about my guest today from listening to his podcast. There aren't that many other music education podcasts that I choose to listen to, but his podcast really got me hooked with discussions I just wasn't hearing anywhere else and some controversial headlines like how making assumptions in your business is costing you money and why your website message probably stinks, and even should you be in the music lesson business? It certainly made me tune in, and I'm very excited to welcome him to the show in just a moment. He talks about clarifying your message, search engine optimization, Facebook branding, hiring and firing employees, and everything to do with running a successful music business, small or large. Today's focus is actually on branding, and it's a topic that is often ignored by piano studio owners, but has a massive impact on every aspect of your business. We share a dead easy two-step process for thinking about your brand, and we talk about how logos and even websites should probably come secondary to planning out your brand. My guest today is the co-owner of the Music Factory School of Music in California. Along with Music Factory, he's also the drummer for the iconic 90s punk band Face to Face. In 2017, he put his business side into full swing and started the Music Lesson Business Academy podcast. That's the one I was talking about just before. He also drinks Coke with his wine, but not at the same time. I should actually write lyrics, shouldn't I? Welcome to the show, Danny Thompson.
Thanks, Tim. Good to see you, man.
So this is the first in our 3-part marketing/business series. Just before we get into today's topic, how did you become interested in the business side of running a studio and helping other teachers with that?
Yeah. Dave, it's funny you asked that. I've been asked this a lot recently, and I kind of came to it from a different perspective because I really came into the studio business from other businesses. So I worked for the chain, Guitar Center chain of music stores for 18 years. So I hired and fired and trained and did lots of sales training. And, so I had a deep business background, and I fell in love with the science of retail. And so even then I was kind of a business geek. I had been a musician prior to that. And then I started kind of having this, after 18 years of working retail, I knew I wanted to do something else. And that also kind of went hand in hand with me having a desire to play music again. And so I was working full time at Guitar Center, and I was starting to play drums in local bands again. And I just kind of kept making my way from one band to the next and kind of moving up the ranks. And I started to get offers from touring bands. And I was always like, well, I can't do it. There's no way you're going to pay me. I was used to corporate money,
sick leave, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And, and I tell this story quite often. I was at a corporate meeting. We were at a big warehouse event where we had like a distribution center, and they had a break room for all the employees. And there was a mural on the wall, and it was like a scene of a crowd, as if you were on stage playing, looking out at this crowd.
Right.
And I got literally kind of this sick feeling in my stomach because I knew I could have done more with music in my life. And that was kind of the turning point. So the music school kind of was, came out of a trip I had taken to Europe with another Guitar Center friend of mine. We went to follow the Tour de France, and he was from Germany, and we went to Germany and visited the music college that he had attended. And they had this really cool building with this cool cafe and all this stuff. And that we were like, man, there's nothing like this in Orange County. We should open a music school. And that's how it started.
Wow.
And I continued to work at Guitar Center for a couple years while we were opening the school. So in the beginning, I really just paid for everything. And he kind of left Guitar Center within the first 6 months, and he was running it. And it was really 5 or 6 years before I got really involved with the business. So at the beginning, I was kind of on the outside, and it wasn't until I got deep on the inside that I fell in love with, the customers and what we were actually doing every day.
Right.
So I'm a drummer, but I'm kind of a business geek at the same time.
I like it. And I think a lot of the approach that I have comes from the fact that I didn't go down the standard path that a lot of musicians do through university, conservatories, straight into teaching, that sort of thing. You come about it from a different angle when you've been in business or traveled and those kinds of things. So I can totally see how that has had an impact. Although I love that story about the picture on the wall being a bit of a revelation for you. That's remarkable.
Well, and it's crazy how your life works out sometimes, because when I started playing in bands again, I was listening to certain bands. I was listening to the Foo Fighters and listening to Bad Religion and Brooks Wackerman, one of my favorite drummers in Bad Religion. And I was thinking to myself, man, I'd really like to play in, a band like this. And it was 3 years later, I was playing a huge festival here in Orange County. And I looked over to the right, and there's Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters, Brooks Wackerman from Bad Religion, and Taylor Hawkins, the drummer from the Foo Fighters, watching me play in a band. And I was like, man, this is a big difference from a couple years ago when I was driving to work at Guitar Center.
Absolutely.
And it's, and I tell that story because I was 40 years old at that point. I wasn't in my 20s out there touring in a band. I didn't have any success in music till I was 40 years old. And it's just interesting how your life comes out. And I was thinking about this. I know exactly where I was when I heard your podcast the first time.
Oh, really?
Right. So last September, I was in a hot tub in Hawaii.
I have never heard this before.
Well, it just kind of came to me the other day, and Dave Simon, our mutual friend, sent me a text, and he said, hey, have you ever heard this guy's podcast before? And I listened to an episode I kind of scrolled through, and I found an episode on group piano lessons, because that was something we wanted to move into. And here we are.
There you go.
Not even a year later.
Wow. And you've also started your own podcast, which we'll give a shout out to a little bit later, because it's awesome. But let's get into today's topic. So we're going to talk about branding today. And I've heard branding described as what people say about you when you're not around. Do you reckon that's an apt description?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good way to explain it. When I think about brand and how it can help somebody, I think I present it, or I think about it differently. A lot of people think about branding as putting your logo on, coffee mugs or pens and handing that stuff out. And I don't really, those things are fine to do, but I don't really care about any of that stuff. I always talk about brand as brand identity, right? And the identity is the key word in there. So the brand identity is who you are as a business or as a person. And that's where I think it's really helpful to, a music teacher or a music school owner, because it really helps define who you're going to be as a business.
Right. And as you say, it's not just about the title or the name of your business or the logo or the colors for that matter. It is all of those things together, but ultimately it's what people think about you, what they immediately imagine when they see your business first time online and things like that. And I think a lot of piano teachers perhaps don't give this really a second thought. We just kind of start teaching and things hopefully grow from there.
Yeah.
So for teachers that have been teaching for a while, is branding something that they can still do? Do they have to kind of start again, or what's your approach there?
Yeah, I think you may have naturally kind of developed a brand. I think that happens. And I think it changes over time. I think, for me, our brand changed over time. And there was that moment where I realized, that what we were presenting to the world via websites and social media wasn't anything near what the school was actually like, And yeah, I redid the logo, but that, like you're saying, the logo and the colors, those are all little elements. They don't really have a big impact on your success, but I almost say logos are like more for the business owner. They make us feel good, but really, the customers don't really ever care. But, and the way I'll just go through it real quick. I actually kind of learned about this branding exercise from another podcast that's also from Australia, Small Business, Big Marketing with Tim Reed. Yep. And I always like to give credit out there for, I didn't invent this stuff. I'm reparroting somebody else's things that they taught me. But he always said, if you went to a party and you were talking to a stranger and you told them all about your piano teaching business or your music school, and then later that night when that person was driving home and they turned to their significant other, they might say, man, Tim's piano teaching business really sounds, and then they would explain it in these words. They might say, Tim's piano business really sounds exciting and fun and educational or cutting edge or whatever, however you've described it. And that's how you kind of develop your brand identity is how would you like, and you kind of really said it, how would somebody else talk about your business if you weren't there? Because they might say, Danny's music school seems kind of humdrum. Seems like what everyone else is doing, or it seems kind of, it seems nice. And is that what you want your brand identity to be? Probably not. But, and I think for a lot of us, for a teacher that's maybe been doing it for a while, it's going to be a combination of what you want it to be and what maybe it's kind of naturally or organically sort of fallen into.
And that's where logos can have an impact, I guess, too, and fonts for that matter. And I've used in my own presentations before examples of people's fonts that have that kind of copper plate headline from a newspaper style font that looks kind of gothic. And and that when I present it to people, people instantly have a reaction to that. It's probably stuffy, it's old, it's classical, it's whatever it is. And so we've got to be careful there and that's where the logo comes into it, I think, and fonts and things with what we put out to people and how that actually looks to them, because that will also give them an instant reaction, and it's just like meeting someone in the flesh. First few seconds, bang, you've got a vision of them. So we need to be careful of that too, I think.
Sure, and I think where it really can help you is once here's what my brand identity is going to be, you have this blueprint now to make your decisions from. So if you've laid out this blueprint of how you'd like to be viewed by customers. When you're asked about, maybe taking on a different kind of program at your school or you're doing your website, you're going to look at those things and go, yeah, that does match my brand or it doesn't, and good examples of this, like you're saying, using certain fonts on a website, certain fonts. And if you're not a web developer, web developers, they know how to lay out a website so it looks clean and it looks slick. And that says something about your brand versus maybe a website that you put together using Wix or Squarespace or, some kind of site like that, where that presents a brand identity of low quality possibly. So if you're saying I'm a high-end teacher, I charge high-end rates, but here's my little website that I had my neighbor throw together for me. Those things don't match each other, so that's where I think people should be aware of those things.
Now, a quick word from our sponsor, My Music Staff. Most of you have already heard about My Music Staff and how their software helps thousands of music teachers manage their businesses more efficiently. They handle all of your student management issues, scheduling, billing, and so much more. It's what I personally use in my own studio, and it's no surprise why it's the leading studio management software. What I think really makes My Music Staff stand out is its community-driven development and personal approach to customer support. It was such a pleasant surprise jumping into My Music Staff for the first time and realizing how in tune it was with my business and the ins and outs of a music studio. Since they partner with the music community to develop their software, they've been able to anticipate what teachers need and are constantly improving their software to exceed expectations. My Music Staff is super easy to get up and running. The transition away from paper and spreadsheets is painless. If you do need help, the quality of support is second to none, and you'll always get a fully personalized response. I have yet to see the level of attention and care I receive from my music staff provided by any other software platforms I use, and I use a lot of software in my business. So what have you got to lose? Just go to mymusicstaff.com and sign up for their free 30-day trial today. So you've mentioned the idea of a blueprint. Where would you suggest we start? Have you got a little bit of a step-by-step process or questions that teachers should ask themselves and literally perhaps write down in order to start getting their brand clear?
I think, I just go through, and if I'm talking to somebody that I'm trying to help out, I just take them through that process that we just talked about. Imagine being at that party, you're explaining your business. How is somebody going to relate it when they tell somebody else about it? And just write down those 5 or 6 words or short phrases that would describe how your business is viewed. And I think if you just start with that, that leads you to then determining who your best customer is going to be, because those two things go together. Mm-hmm. And you should write those things out. If you do those two things, you should get a pretty good idea. It's not a long process, but it's one that people seem to overlook or underestimate how powerful it could be in really helping them determine who you're going to be. Because once you know who you're going to be, then you just lean into it 100%.
Right.
Yep.
And it also comes back to the idea of trying to differentiate yourself or decide where your strengths are or what you really want to do. And while we all probably start by taking on any student we possibly can under any circumstances at any price, just to get kids in the door.
Sure.
We eventually need to start differentiating ourselves and deciding what we really like. And so for me, I've become known as a bit of a contemporary pop composing kind of guy that can take transfer students on and hopefully stop them quitting. And I love that role. That's where I'm strongest. And I think for you with your music school, there's obviously a real sense of energy and contemporary bands and those kinds of things. So that's probably that next step. If we can set that from the beginning in our brand blueprint, then that's great, but it's okay to develop that over time as well.
Yeah, I specifically remember when we started our school, we had totally different intentions for where we thought it would be. We, wanted a certain type of customer that we thought would be the right, mix for us and what we wanted to do. And over time, we had to make those adjustments based on realizing that we were picking the wrong kind of customer, and the customer we had didn't have any money to spend, or they were flaky students, and you have to make those adaptations. But I think over time you're going to, if you start with some type of vision of where would I ultimately like to be. I mean, you made a great point. Yeah. At the beginning, you might just have to take on students that, ultimately that's not where you want to be. And that's okay. I think, as long as you have that kind of end goal in mind that you're trying to get to, you're going to progressively make decisions in your business and, through the way you market and the way you teach and the programs you're willing to offer. And, eventually you really determine this is who we are, or I am, and this is the customer that we're trying to take care of and help.
And is this the same, in your opinion, as a mission and a vision and those businessy terms?
I think they relate. A lot of those kind of terms, I almost avoid using that stuff in a lot of cases because I came from that corporate, background where it's all about that. It's like, okay, we have to write a mission statement, and then we have to have a list of core values, and then we have to have a list of, I can't even remember the 5 fundamentals and the 5 this and there was lists everywhere of all these things. And, it got to be, I think I remember going to a restaurant and I saw their computer screen. They had put their mission or their 5 core principles and core values. And I was like, it's funny, those core values, they're the exact same ones we're using, at our business. And the service is terrible here at this restaurant, and like, is it real? Does it really mean anything? So I tend to not think about it in those terms as much, but I think certainly, having that vision of what you want to do and how you see it in the future and how you see it impacting people's lives and helping people, I think that's really important for sure.
I've heard this called USP, unique selling proposition, I think. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the same thing as we're talking about here, isn't it? It's deciding how you will be different to other people, what's unique about you, and being able to state it clearly.
Right. And that might be a little bit different than your brand identity. But I think that's, you're not going to be able to develop a unique selling proposition if you don't know who you are and what you're trying to accomplish first.
True.
So, when I'm coaching somebody or talking to them, I make everybody start with that brand identity thing, because I think it's that's the genesis. You got to start there and then work outward from there versus, people tend to want to jump ahead and do the website stuff. Everyone gets excited about that. And it's like, well, we need to figure out who you are first.
Yes. Yep. And logos, they're the thing that everyone wants to jump to.
People love logos.
Yeah, that's right.
I should have been a logo designer. That would be way more lucrative.
And I've learned over time that I am the worst designer, and it's the thing that I should not do. So
I'm not good at any of that either.
And please, teachers out there, don't try and design your own logo, whatever you do, even if you are jumping to that first and it's not the right thing to do. But if you have to do a logo or update it, please don't get your nephew, niece, friend-in-law to do it. Find a designer. They're really easy to find online now on sites like Fiverr, Fiverr.
I have an amazing guy, and we could put his link in the show notes.
Yeah, please.
And he is a professional level designer, and his rates are so affordable that everyone that I've turned on to him has come back to me and said how amazing they think he is. And it's a weird thing with new businesses, because I remember when we started our school and we were drawing out logos. It's like, what are we thinking? We're not graphic designers. Like,
right.
Why are we have no business trying to do that, and everybody does it. It's so funny. You're like afraid to go, well, I need to hire somebody to do this. It's like you try to bootstrap everything yourself.
Well, thank you very much for that link. We will definitely put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
And they're going to be at timtopham.com/episode 128 for those of you who are listening. Don't go to it while you're driving your car, though. I want to talk briefly about taglines as well, because this is a part of branding that people see. Nike, everyone knows, is just do it. A website, a music studio might have, building better musicians or whatever it is.
Right.
And our mutual friend who we mentioned before, Dave Simon, superstar, loving the stuff that he shares with people. He had a little YouTube video. It's just about 2.5 minutes or thereabouts, where he's asking and providing some tagline options to one of his students' parents for some feedback. Let's take a listen.
Okay, this is Dave Simon. You're here with Holly. She is a parent at my rock school in St. Louis, and just going to ask her a few questions. So tell me, Holly, what was your initial hope for your child when you sign up for music lessons?
Gosh, me and
Tough
her
question.
dad, we are big music fans, all genres. So we just wanted to increase her exposure to music, all kinds of music, and hope that she would really find a love and appreciation for it, like we do. And we started with piano. I think we're going to expand to guitar next semester. So. Okay,
that's great. And you said some key things in there. I'm going to read to you some taglines from music schools.
Okay.
And which ones do you, let's say you didn't go to school here, or your daughter didn't, and you were looking on the internet at music schools. I'm going to give you Group A, Group B. Okay, there's 5 taglines for each. Which group do you find more enticing, intriguing, and appealing as a parent? Okay, Group A is this: the finest music education available, voted the best music school in Springfield, Springfield's largest music school, expert instruction, offering the best music lessons to our community. Okay, that's Group A.
Okay.
I'm just curious, is there a theme that you hear through that?
It sounds just a little stuffy and prestigious. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but just we're the best and almost like a classical education.
How does that make you feel when you hear that? Even if it was a different service. Let's say you're looking at a gymnastics studio for your daughter.
I don't know. It just, to me, this is just to me, it just comes across as a little stuffy. And when, we're looking for music and especially a rock school, I feel we just want a little bit of freedom and creativity there.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay, so here's Group B. Music lessons you'll love. Inspiring kids through music. Empower your child. Learn to love how to play. A life-changing experience. That's Group B.
Yes,
How would
yes,
you just...
Yes.
And what do you mean by yes?
Empowering your child. Your kid's going to love it. Have fun. I mean, that's what we're looking for.
So, Danny, what do you think of Dave's approach and the outcome? Were you surprised by what the parent thought of those two varying tagline approaches?
No, I think it made perfect sense. I did have a conversation with Dave about this because in my second life that I would like to have, I'm a science geek. And so the way he presented those was actually, it created what's called tester's bias, where the people they knew what group was A and what group was B, and it was very clear what group you were hoping to get a positive response from.
Right.
So I did tell him that his scientific methods were off and that we couldn't read too much into that. But that said, where I think there's a confusion is between what people might consider a tagline, like Nike's Just Do It. So to have something like that under your logo, or whatever, that's fine. Where people go wrong with that is on your website, what you really want is crystal clear messaging. And, I've been talking about it on my podcast and, with everyone. If you haven't read Building a Story Brand, the book, you should really read that because it's all about making your messaging clear. And all of us tend to get a little overly creative, trying to be cute and interesting with our images and our messaging on a website. So when a parent hits a website, Building Better Musicians doesn't really say what you do. Providing Melbourne's pop modern piano lessons for, kids and adults tells people what you do. Right. But every piano teacher says, well, that's boring and I want to be special. So, and I did it for years on my website. So it's just an important distinction. I think a tagline can help you in your branding. And again, it just relates to who you are, and helps you. I think more than anything, something like that almost works better to just help remind you as the business owner who you are, more so than it's really impacting a lot of the customers.
And more websites that I see these days, particularly for online services, literally the first thing you see is an image and overlaid is their, I wouldn't call it their tagline, it's probably their message, right?
It's the main message, yeah.
We help music studios build converting websites or something like that. Yeah, so it's absolutely clear what you do.
I'll read you my, it's interesting when I look at other businesses and how they do it. A martial arts studio won't put a picture of something that isn't a kid doing martial arts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they'll say flat out what we do, but music schools tend to miss that mark sometimes, and they want to show other things to show how creative they are. And really all you're doing is just confusing people. When they land on your page, it needs to have a picture of somebody playing piano or taking a piano lesson. That's what you do. You would never go to somebody else's website who does something, if you go to a plumber's website, they don't show a picture of a park.
Right.
It's just not what they do. And the message should be very clear of what you do and what you provide.
And instantly visible, I guess, without having to scroll too. I think that's a really great thing.
Right above the fold. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of those other elements of branding and take your pick as to which you might have some thoughts on. Either fonts, colors, writing style, things like that. All messaging we've talked about. Any other thoughts on those kind of elements?
Yeah, I mean, those are tough ones for me. I'm not I don't consider myself to be really good. I'm not a good writer. I always hire somebody to do the writing. I understand the sales portion of the writing, and I can do an outline for that. But then I always hire somebody who's an actual writer to make it sound right and get rid of all my grammatical errors and problems that my writing will always have. So I think the copy is super important. The text that's on your website is tremendously important. And along those same lines, you have to have a plan with that. And it's kind of moving out of branding a little bit. It's more of a sales function. But the colors, the fonts isn't something that I've thought about as much, until when we were prepping to do this interview and you mentioned that, it got me thinking more about that how those kind of things can impact that overall feeling that somebody has when they land on your website. And in most cases, many of the times they land on your website, they're only there for seconds. And you really only have those seconds to communicate that brand identity, who you are, and here's what we do. And here's how you sign up.
Yeah, exactly. The call to action is crucial.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that on previous episodes regarding website design. So if you're interested in that, definitely have a listen back to season 1, 2018. We've got a couple of episodes in there about websites. How did you go about finding writers to help you? Because that's a tricky one.
Yeah. Well, Dave Simon is actually really good at it.
Is he? Is there anything he can't do?
Well, I think he was an English major. So when I write something, I send it to him. And if I don't, and I post it without sending it to him, I always get a report back from him of all of my spelling errors. And I do spell checks. So it's usually a grammatical error, and it'll give me this big rundown of like, this is a run-on sentence and this is that, So, but I find people on Upwork, which is a freelancer's website. And I've had really good luck on there with writers, and they're really affordable. And, they'll always provide you with a sample. And I've used Upwork for a lot of different things for, prior to working with Christina, who I use for website stuff now. Prior to that, I found a designer on Upwork that I worked with for years who was excellent, really affordable, and got the work done very, very well. It's a little bit of a process to use those sites. You kind of have to go through a process of finding a person, and they'll probably do a terrible job and you got to get rid of them. But you go through a few people, you'll find somebody good. So I think that's a good starting point for it.
I use Upwork for most of my team, and I agree.
Oh, okay.
I think it's fantastic. And I actually have in our InnerCircle membership area a video to save you making those mistakes.
Cool.
Exactly how to hire someone on Upwork without the fails, hopefully, because I've learned heaps, as you have, about that. So, but do investigate that. It's amazingly easy to find people around the world who can do great things in your business, and because they're in different countries, they're often at a lower price point. But I would say, for me, I don't know about you, Danny, when it comes to forward-facing content and copy words, I only ever use English native speakers, so America, Europe, Western Europe, and Australia. Do you find the same?
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's really important.
I've read and I've heard from some other people that we're doing some tutoring on that whole concept of building your virtual team. I believe it's the Philippines where they speak really good English. So they're pretty good. But in general, I tend to just hire, people from the States. I like to be able to communicate with them during the normal, the same rough time zone as me and things like that. But there's a bunch of great people on there, and I think it definitely is a really great resource for people. When people because somebody will comment to me and say, I don't have a big budget to do these things that you're talking about. And you know what? I don't either. No. I really don't, and I think they just don't understand how in today's age, how to get those things done. So I think that's great that you have that resource in there for people.
And my designer, who is based in Spain, she, I think she's about $30 an hour, and she helped me with I did a rebrand of colors and fonts, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years ago, probably 2 years ago now. And she just set up lots of templates for me in Canva, in Google Docs, and all this kind of thing. So everything looks the same. And I think that would be what I say about colors and fonts. Don't use too many, because that's the biggest mistake. Keep your colors and things sensible, easy to read, and again, matching your theme. I obviously, I have a large audience that's female, given the piano teaching community I have. So you want to use colors that are appropriate for that market particularly. So perhaps I wouldn't use lots of really angular yellows and blacks and things like that, which might be considered more masculine. So they're that's a simple approach. And with fonts, I have a bit of a font fetish. I love learning about fonts. I know it's really weird. I've read books about it.
Wow.
The impact a font can have instantly is it's remarkable. So when it comes to fonts, just go easy, guys. Just use a couple that work really well for you.
I might have to investigate that a little bit more.
I've got a couple of book recommendations that, they're full of examples, and you just look at them and what they say about them, and you look back and you go, oh, yeah, that's exactly what that says.
Wow. Cool.
It's amazing. Yeah.
I like it.
So, look, we'll start wrapping things up a little bit because I want these to be nice and punchy for us.
Sure.
Did you have any other thoughts with regard to either your own brand or just good or bad examples of branding in the music area that you've seen that could help us with our own thoughts on this?
Oh, I can't say that I have specific examples of bad branding. I think what I see the most is that it just looks like there was no thought really put into it first. It's like we said, it started with the logo and then it kind of branched out from there based around and I did all the same, I made all these mistakes. I just came at it from the wrong perspective. I wasn't looking at it from the customer perspective. I did it based on what I thought was cool, what I liked, how I wanted my thing to be, versus, presenting something that really was true to what we were going to do. So I think the most important thing is to really just try to really nail down who you're going to be and how you want to be perceived and who your customers that you really want to help. We can't be everything to everybody, and that's the worst mistake you can make, is to try to be everything to everybody. Figure out who you're going to be, and then you go deep in that area.
I think that is a fantastic statement to finish on. I was going to ask you what your big takeaway for teachers was from this interview, and that was it. So go and do that simple branding exercise that Danny suggested. As you say, it's not complex. It's not difficult. Grab a coffee, get away from everything, and go and have a think about what you want to achieve, because that's the best place to start. So thanks heaps, Danny, for your chat today. I think it was a great start, and we're going to look forward to speaking to you in the next episode as well. But just before that, you better tell us really quickly about your podcast, because I love listening to your podcast, and I actually don't listen to that many music-based ones. You've caught me. Tell us about it quickly.
Music Lesson Business Academy. It's on iTunes, and check it out.
All about the business side of running your studio. It's really, really good. Highly recommend it. And I've learned a lot. So thanks heaps, Danny.
Awesome.
We'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you.
Well, I really hope you enjoyed that discussion with Danny Thompson, all about brand, and hopefully it's got you thinking. And what I would really encourage you to do, as Danny says, is just take the time to do that little branding exercise. Rewind, go back and listen to it. Set aside some time, some clear head time, glass of wine or coffee, tea, whatever it is that you like. Try and get away and try and put down those thoughts. It really will have a big impact on your ability to influence your students and also to build the studio that you're really looking to build. And now some reminders. I'm very excited to let you know that it is now time to book in for my next webinar. It's called Getting Groovy with GarageBand in Your Studio, and it's on next week. And I'm going to show you exactly how easy it is to get started using GarageBand in your studio. You can head to timtopham.com/webinar to register, and early access is available to the full course right now for all InnerCircle members. It's in the Course Academy. Go and start using it if you wish. Next week on the podcast, part 2 with Danny Thompson. We're going to focus on a really controversial statement, and that is why practice might be killing your business. It is a controversial topic, which we explored on a Facebook Live while I was over in Florida for MTNA, and which Danny has explored in 2 different episodes on his own podcast. It created some great discussion and really caused teachers to think. Whether you agree or not with our thinking next week, you'll certainly be challenged when you tune in. I'm Tim Topham, and this is the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast. Thank you so much for listening.
will conclude this evening's entertainment.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast. We'd love to help take your teaching to the next level as a member of our supportive community. Use the coupon Piano Podcast for $100 off an annual membership of Tim's InnerCircle today. To find out more, head to timtopham.com/community.